He keeps himself in trim by bending bars of iron. This bar is the genuine article which we tested before he began to play with it.
Beyond the bend, beyond the bend.
So, where are you from, and how did you get into bending?
I'm from Tucson, Arizona. Lived here my whole life. I got into bending, I was 14. Actually started on the bodybuilding forums when I was getting into weightlifting in general, and encountered a guy by the name of Gator Grip, who I don't know if he still does grip anymore or not. His real name is Walter Cruz. He directed me towards Gripboard, and on Gripboard I met this guy named Aaron Corcoran, who still competes in grip. I don't think he does too much bending anymore, but he is one of the best grip guys of all time and benders of all time. And he lives in Tucson, so I started training with him, and he introduced me to the sport.
Oh, right on.
Yep.
And so what do you do for a living, and did you have an athletic background prior to the bodybuilding thing, or?
For a living, I am an aspiring State Farm agent, so I'm actually working with a State Farm agent right now, wanting to become one. I did not really have any athletic background prior to, I didn't actually get into bodybuilding. That was just the forum I started on, but I did not have any background before that. I was like a skinny little twig of a kid. You can still find my YouTube videos up of me at like 14 when I looked, I was like 140 pounds soaked in wet, like no muscular definition whatsoever, and bending like, quarter-inch round. So yeah, this was what got me into other powerlifting and such.
Gotcha. How old are you now?
I am 28, just turned 28.
Okay. So damn, you got like 14 years into this or something?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't into grip during that center part. I was into more powerlifting strongman from like 21 to 26-ish, and just got back into this, partially because of quarantine. I actually started a little bit before it, but it's intensified because we can't do anything else. But yeah, I've been doing this in general for 14 years-ish.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think a lot of people are sort of leaning into it just because of the isolation of quarantine, it seems like.
It's an easy thing to buy.
Yeah, for sure. So I've seen you on your YouTube, you have a lot of bends going up the last couple of weeks. Is that all stuff that you've been doing in the last couple of weeks, or is that stuff you had in the tank that you're just throwing up now?
No, that stuff I upload them the next day usually. Every once in a while I'll upload it later, but in a given workout I'll do 4 or 5 bends. A lot of the times they'll be PR attempts, and if they're successful, I'm putting them on YouTube and put them on Gripboard too. So yeah, they're all stuff that's done the day before or 2 days before, whenever I get around to posting it.
Wow, cool. And you don't have an Instagram this time, right?
I need to. I have an Instagram, but it's not really anything about bending. It's just, and I haven't even posted on it in like 6 years.
Oh, really?
So I do keep meaning to make an Instagram for my bending, and I will eventually, and I'll put it up for you once I make one. But
yeah, you should for sure. That's
I'll
like
let you know, you can like tag it or whatever. But
yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it seems like a lot of guys are getting a lot of followers from putting their bends on Instagram.
I'll have to do that.
So you kind of touched on it, but so what kind of training are you doing outside bending right now? You have normal weightlifting routine or no?
I'm doing a little bit of weightlifting. I acquired some weight stuff. We bought a house right as all this nonsense happened, so I was planning on having a garage gym. Thank you. So there's an attached garage, so I was going to have a garage gym, and I was intending on buying the equipment. And by the time I got to the point of buying the equipment, everything you couldn't get. So I've acquired some dumbbells and a few handful of things. So I do some weight training, and I have some other grip stuff like an axle, a rolling thunder, a few things like that. But it's like mostly bending and then a little bit of weights when I feel up to it. I don't really have a great training plan right now, to be honest.
Yeah. I saw some of the grippers and stuff hanging in the YouTube videos.
Yep.
I got an Iron Mind or a Rolling Thunder too during this quarantine. Actually, got a nice program from Clay Edgin. Is that how you say his last name? Yeah. Edgin. He's actually coming on the show tomorrow if all goes well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, what are some of the bends or like feats of strength that you've done that you feel like you're most proud of?
I think the one I was most proud of recently was the 6-inch grade 8, because that had only been done prior by one person. When I say grade 8, I mean a 5/16 grade 8. So that had only been done by one person prior, and that was and I failed 3 times prior to completing it. So it was a really, you could see like the joy when I watched that YouTube video. I'm also really proud of the 5-inch Edgin, because no one had ever cut one that short before. Named after Clay Edgin, the guy you're talking to tomorrow, because he was the first person to ever bend that bolt at 7 inches.
Right, I was just realizing that. Yeah.
Yep. So those are 2 of my most proud ones, I'd say.
Hell yeah. And what was the one? I think it was your second to most recent video. You got a bar sent to you from Don. I think that looked huge.
Oh yeah. Those are iron grip bars. I think that was actually when I was in the break that was active, but it's a certification site that is no longer active. It was done by someone in Russia, I believe.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly the type of steel. It's like 10 mil or 25/64. It's a big chunk of steel.
Yeah.
And they have their own different calibration system than what the Americans tend to use. So it was definitely like strong, but I don't know exactly all the details of it. I do know like only one person had done something harder than that in their calibration system.
Wow.
Back when it was active again. So.
Gotcha. So basically, one thing that I really like about bending is, and like in my short time doing it, I really feel like it gives you the functional strength that, like, you know, a lot of time, in my case, grapplers are after, right? It's like people talk about farm strength or like whatever, but it's like, you know, you might grapple against a guy that's like cut up like a bodybuilder, but he doesn't feel like all that much. But then you roll with like a mechanic, and his grip is like the most painful thing on earth. So I definitely think like there's some correlation between what we're all doing in the steel bending and building that farm strength or functional strength. Like, you have any thoughts on that?
I definitely agree with that. I think a lot of the strongest benders and a lot of people who just start bending and have the most immediate success are people who have some of that background in like coal mining. Like one of the best benders back in my day, Chad Kovach, did coal mining in steel mills, I think. I forget exactly what he did. So I think there's a lot of correlation there because it's working with your hands. Yeah. And you get that kind of some of those small tendon buildup where no matter what you do in the gym, you're never going to work those tiny little tendons. That bending works, and that doing that manual type labor job works. So I think there's definitely a correlation. I think a lot of those people have some of the most immediate success in bending. And if they continue it, they can be some of the best, of course, because you just have those pre-existing strengths.
The other thing I like about it that I think has sort of driven me into it so heavily, so quick is, and I'd like to know your thoughts about this, is like, it's sort of black and white. It's kind of binary. Like, you either bend the steel or you don't, right? It's like, it's not like you did the lift, but your form was all wacky and like people are going to hate on it because of that. Like, it's pretty simple. It's like you either bent it or you didn't. And I love the bittersweet nature of that. You know, it's like the same for me for grappling. It's like I either tapped the guy or I did not, you know, and I got to live with the results either way, you know? And
yeah, I mean, I think there's some truth there. You got to do it. I mean, if you're doing double overhand bending, it has to get to 2 inches. If you're snapping, it has to snap. If you're doing reverse or double underhand, it has to get to 40 degrees. Those are finite lines, you know, as opposed to, you're right, in like powerlifting, you can doubt the judging, like, oh, maybe that shouldn't have been a good lift, et cetera, et cetera. But bending, there is that you either meet the criteria or you don't. Obviously, there's room to improve on things like form and such, to your point, but it is very finite. Like, you either succeed or you don't, and then you build from there. So
yeah, I like
cool.
Yeah, you kind of go down, you know, in my case, the basement, or you're in your garage. It's like you go out there, you either kind of come back in a winner or not, you know, and it's like you got life goes on and you got to figure out how to improve from there. It's like in a world full of the gray area, you know, because it's nothing's too black and white, you know, too right or wrong or black or white or whatever you might say. I think people are more and more drawn to things that are definitive and finite, you know, like I got tapped or I didn't. I bent it or I didn't, you know?
Yeah.
So have you ever competed in grip in the past or no?
Yeah. I haven't recently, but I did back in the day when I was competing from age 14 to, I don't remember when I stopped, 19 or 20, 18, 19, 20, somewhere in there. Yeah, I competed at some of Aaron's contests here. There was Arizona Cactus Grip and a couple other contests he threw. I competed at Backyard Bastard Bash, which was an old contest thrown by the Fat Bastard Barbell Company owner, John Beatty, back when he owned that. Now it's owned by Andrew Canty. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. But that was back when John Beatty owned it, and I competed at that one. I don't remember what year that was, 2009, something like that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of big grip guys there, and
Nice.
I think I competed in another out-of-state one, but I don't remember which that would have been. I think there was one in Texas I did too, but I can't quite remember.
No, cool. Yeah, that's just sort of like something I really like so far about the community. It feels like it's sort of tight knit and somewhat underground still, you know, and bending being like a subset of grip. But even just if you think about grip in general, it reminds me of like when I got into jiu-jitsu in the early 2000s. It was still sort of like underground, and like people thought it was like this wild thing you're doing, and now it's sort of like, you know, Demi Lovato is like a blue belt. So.
I don't know that grip's ever going to get that mainstream as jiu-jitsu. I hope it does. That'd be awesome. But I think it'll always be a niche sport, just because, I mean, I don't think normal people can take this kind of stuff on their hands, like, you know, when they're ripping hands open and all that sort of stuff. But who knows? Maybe eventually someday it'll be something that people know about. I hope it does. But yeah,
for sure. My gut feeling is that we will see some growth in it, because chatting with David Horn a little bit and Dan Strauss. Are you familiar with Dan Strauss, the Raspberry Ape?
I'm not.
So he's a jiu-jitsu guy in England, and he does a ton of strongman stuff. He was the first guy I saw ever bend a nail, or he does a bunch of like stone lifting and sandbags and card carrying and all this stuff. And he was really my inspiration to really get into this like world of strength. But so he has a podcast called the Raspberry Ape Podcast, and he had David on. And since that, there's been I'm one of many that are grapplers that are coming over to. It kind of hit right at the perfect time, because it was like a month or two before the lockdown, and so I think that there's a bunch of grapplers out of grappling. So what are they going to do? They're going to try to work on their grip. So from what I gather, maybe there's not a giant like influx of people, but there's definitely a notable influx of people, so much to where David made a grapplers division in this year's Steel Shredder.
Yeah, and I hope that, I know David's done a lot for growing grip, and I hope that it continues. I just know that it shrunk a lot since I was last involved in bending. You know, when I was in it from age 14 to 20, there were a lot more people doing bending, and grip board was a lot more active than it is now. So I hope it ramps back up. But I know back then there was definitely a lot more camaraderie, a lot more competitiveness, and a lot more high-level benders than there are now, in my opinion. So we'll see. I mean, I know David also does a lot more, I guess, different bending than I do. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but he's more into like the snapping and unusual types of bending, where I'm very conventional, like double overhand, big pads, bend the biggest steel possible. So, you know, but as long as the sport's growing in general, that's always a good thing, even if it's off into other niches that I'm not necessarily going to pursue. So hopefully it grows. I hope it does.
It's interesting. It's gone in waves like that. Like you said, I wasn't really aware of that. What do you think might be the reason behind that? Just guys getting older and bored of it, or?
I think that's some of it. I mean, older, more injured, bored of it. I know, like back then, a lot of the people that were high-level benders were in their low to mid 30s, which, you know, isn't old, obviously, by even an athlete standpoint, especially when we're just using hands and arms. But they go through injuries, they go through, you know, life changes, family changes, whatever the case may be, and they kind of drift away from it. And I don't really know, because when I left it, it was still relatively thriving. I just went off in my own, you know, doing strongman and powerlifting stuff. So I don't really know why it took a dip, but that's my guess.
You actually just showed your hands there. So what kind of injuries have you dealt with from bending?
Nothing terrible. I mean, I haven't had any, knock on wood, obviously, I haven't had any severe injuries. Like Aaron, unfortunately, just tore his bicep. He's recovering from that. So mine's mostly just been tearing hands. I mean, bruised, torn up hands, and minor sprain, strain. My most fun injury from grip in general was when I broke both pinky toes. That was actually at Backyard Bastard Bash. I was wearing those toe shoes back then. I think I was 16, 17. And we were doing 2.5-inch deadlift for max weight, a 2.5-inch bar. And I got it up to like, I locked it out and I lost control just a little bit on the way down. I was doing sumo deadlifts and smashed both pinky toes. Ooh. So that was fun. But that's the only like broken bone or torn anything I've had from bending, luckily so far.
Actually, like when I just do my normal weight routine, I deadlift barefoot, and I was playing with some sumo the other day, and I was like, this is just a little close. Like, I think I'm gonna throw
you can't use wide stance sumo. That's my advice.
It was scary. So is there any specific exercises that you recommend for bending power?
I mean, most important is just bending. I mean, there's not that much else that's best for bending. I mean, I'm working on like my weight training for my upper back and chest and delts because that is involved. But the biggest thing for bending is just bending. And the other thing that maybe some of the newer benders don't know, if you're doing traditional bending, is isometrics have been huge. Back in my day, they were the biggest thing, the biggest new invention. So just take a big piece of steel that you can't move and just hit on it as long and hard and often as you can. Or you take just, like big fucking steel, bend it, pre-kink it to a certain degree with like a vise and a bar, and then just hit on it with pads for 10 seconds at a time until you feel like you're about to brown out, black out, and then take a break and then do it again. So that's a great exercise that maybe some of the newer benders might not know.
Yeah, as I get deeper into this, I keep hearing guys say isometrics. Two things that made me think of was one, what are your thoughts on shoulder mobility in regard to double overhand specifically? That's something that seems like you need a certain degree of that to have a good double overhand, or?
Yep, that's huge. I mean, there have been some good benders that bend lower, they're like here on their chest.
Yeah.
But the best benders, especially for longer steel, like 7-inch, 8-inch, like the gold nail and stuff that's coming out now, you have to have shoulder flexibility, because if you're trying to bend that down here, you're just not getting your delts involved. You need to be up under your chin. So that's definitely huge. And I've been lucky that way because I didn't have a powerlifting background. I think has helped me more because I started bending. That was my first weight training, essentially. So I've never had the issue with like having too big of arms or too big of shoulders or poor flexibility, because that was what got me my strength in the first place.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a huge thing to have good shoulder mobility, and I recommend that to everybody.
Yeah.
To work on it.
Personally, this is a technical question. So I feel like the kink is my weakest part of bending at this time. So I don't know if that's like routine for a semi-beginner or anything, but I feel like when I watch you bend, you could kink damn near anything. Is that a shoulder mobility thing, or?
That's shoulder mobility. That's technique. When you're newer, you're not going to have as good of technique. I've been doing this for 14 years on and off, so I'm fortunate there. And I was taught by one of the best to ever do it.
I was looking. You looked like you were a little further down on the pads than I am when I was studying your YouTube videos.
I'm also using double wraps. If you're using just iron mines, being a little higher up on the wraps is kind of normal. When you're using doubles, I tend to be very far out. Some people aren't quite as far out as I am still, but that's just a technique thing and finding where you're comfortable. In terms of your question, I'd say shoulder mobility, some of it, you're probably not getting the bar high enough under your chin like you should be, which is, again, normal. You don't know the technique as well.
Yeah.
And then just getting used to that strength. That's not something that people are used to. It's a lot of wrist to kink. And most people don't work their wrists actively, which is where like sledge work actually comes in. I didn't mention that earlier with weight training. So like sledge rotations, sledge levers, not necessarily to the head. That's not what I think is most useful.
Yeah.
But sledge work is really useful. And again, so it's just, you don't have that bending specific strength that you will have if you stick with this.
Gotcha. And is that where some isometric work would come in handy?
Absolutely. Yep. Isometric work. And then I think, again, sledge work, wrist specific stuff on rotation type wrist. So again, not curls, but sledge rotations, sledge levers, that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So here's kind of a funny one. And just watching your YouTube videos, it looks like you have somewhat of a bending ritual. But so do you basically, looks like you got Eminem playing generally?
Not always, but that's what's been firing me up more lately. So yeah, I tend to like Eminem.
Nice.
And then, yeah, I'd say I have somewhat of a ritual. It's not precise, but I have I don't wrap everything, make it all chalked up. And then on the bigger bends, I'll do an ammonia hit just because, I don't know, it feels like it gets me more fired up. And then,
got the Ric Flair woo.
Yeah. I've definitely always been like louder. There are a lot of people, even top level benders, that can just hit into a bar. I don't understand that. If you can do that and bend well, go for it. But I have to get like amped up. And I think that's what contributes to my kink being so strong, is that I'm just so much adrenaline flowing through me that after a bend, I'm just shaking. Like,
I agree.
Especially after the G8 and that sort of, the big PRs, I'll be shaking like a leaf.
I agree. I have to do something similar to like when I'm really going after it. And I just started for my powerlifting stuff too, messing around with the smelling salts a little bit. And it's like, that'll definitely wake you up a little bit.
Yeah, no kidding.
So basically, you've been doing this for a long time. So maybe this isn't even something you think about too much anymore. But what motivates you to just go out into the garage and start freaking wrestling a piece of steel?
I think right now what really motivates me is that I'm chasing being the best double overhand bender of all time. When I was doing this back at, again, my younger days, I was pretty good, especially for my age. There was no one at my age that was doing the things that I was doing, but I still wasn't anywhere close to being the best out there. And now I've come back and had this resurgence in strength, and I think, again, having some powerlifting background has helped there. I'm getting closer to being the best. And I think that really motivates me. Like, I want to bend steel that no one has ever bent. And that's really my long-term goal, is just to bend things that were previously thought of as impossible.
Yeah, that's great. How big of a guy are you? Just what's your...
I'm 5'11", 198.
Okay. Yeah. So that's nice. Like anybody bending under 200, that's, a little extra feather in the cap, I feel like.
Yeah, there's definitely no one under 200 that's close to me right now. Tommy Jennings is a guy that I'd recently passed. He was the other best under 200. But I think the only other person in the world that's close to me or above me, I'd say, is this guy in Russia, who is Alex Klimovich. And so I'm chasing some of his big bends, and the 6-inch G8 was the one that he was the only one who had done before.
Okay, I might have seen some of his stuff on the Facebook group. I think David's Facebook group, possibly.
It's possible.
So you sort of just touched on it, but might as well cover it. Is what specific? I know you want to be the best in the world, but specific goals you have, specific bends. What are you looking to? Have you taken a whack at the gold nail, or?
I'm actually debating ordering some golds. I was waffling on that for a while, which is actually the answer to one of your future questions. I have a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Vendetta, I guess, with Iron Mind.
Okay.
Because my name was on the red nail list. Randall Strawson, the owner and CEO of Iron Mind, had such a problem with me as an 18-year-old that he removed my name from the red nail list. So I've been back and forth on doing their gold nail. Honestly, I'm leaning towards yes, just because I think the strength is there. No one else has ever done it. Yeah. It'd be kind of a nice thing to do in spite, to be honest. But yeah, the gold nail is becoming on my list. I think I'm about to order those. Another, if we're talking long-term goals, King of All Shinies is definitely on there, which is 3/8 by 7 stainless steel. That's only been done by one person way back when.
You know who did that?
Gary Hunt. Nicknamed Gaza. He's an interesting fellow because a lot of people, especially now, question the authenticity of some of his bends, even though some of them he even opened on camera. Partially just because he was doing stuff that no one even thought of doing. So it's hard, and some of his claims were not videoed, so it's hard to say. Maybe he, especially later on, he wasn't videoing everything. Was that just because he was sick of it, or maybe he was making shit up? It's hard to say. But I think that one at least is realistic because actually, there's another person who finished one, but way outside of the 5-minute time limit. So it's definitely within the realm of possibility for that one. And another one that's a goal of mine long-term is the 3/8 grade 5. So 3/8 by 7 grade 5 bolt. That's another one that Gaza claimed to have bent. I don't think he ever did a video of it. So who knows? But
Sure.
that's one that's way out there. But I think it's possible for sure.
That's great. Yeah, so the Iron Mind thing. I feel like that's sort of you might not be the only person that sort of has a bad taste in their mouth about Iron Mind in general. Is the tone that I'm getting from some of the community? Like,
I was not the only person who had their name removed from the list, so that's definitely true. I don't know what is true now, but back in the day, Randall rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. He was just very pretentious and contended that steel didn't vary, which inherently can't be true.
Right.
So his contention was that all of his grippers were exactly consistent, all of his red nails were exactly consistent, which is just false, blatantly. And myself, Josh Dale, Ben Edwards, a few of the OGs of bending, so to speak, called him out on that, and he removed my name from the list. He removed Josh's from the list. Ben never asserted, but he was well able to do so, and I think. Well, I don't want to put words in his mouth. I won't say that.
Sure.
But yeah, there's a lot of people who have a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth towards Randall. And anyway.
Huh. Yeah.
Which is sad because he's, in charge of one of the leading grip type companies.
Yeah, this definitely seems to be like the gateway for a lot of people. That was the only thing I was aware of a couple months ago was just, get an Iron Mind bag of nails, but now
same with the grippers. Everyone starts with has the goal of the 3 gripper, even though now there's a lot more companies that make them. That's still kind of the gold standard, and it's unfortunate that he has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because, again, you're right, he is the intro. He does the crush to dust grip competitions, the ones at the strongman contests, so it gets a lot of publicity, but yeah, unfortunately, the people who are actually in the sport, I think there's a decent amount of them, at least a handful, that don't care for him.
Yeah. I was actually just on the topic of variants in the product. I was just listening to Jed's show, and they had Gary Stewart on, and Gary Pitt Stewart. And he's taking a run at the gold nail, and I guess there's been a clear discrepancy on the gold nail in length, width, and overall strength. So they're even in a batch, they were showing them side by side, and it's clear that there's some inconsistencies with that. But so let's see, how many days a week are you out there bending?
I'm actually bending probably once a week. That's what I'm doing, filling in with other things, and most of that is because of my hand. I keep having problems with either tearing the palm of my hand, and I also have this nice little edema on my ring finger. That is just from my style of crushing down. There's a lot of pressure there. So between those two injuries, I guess I can't bend more than once a week right now and be at a high level. Otherwise, I just wouldn't be able to get the PRs I'm looking for. So I'm just filling in with other training.
What about in the past? When you were a new bender, say?
I think I was doing 2 or 3 times a week, but I was also filling in with a lot of other grip stuff because at that point I was more well-rounded in grip, whereas now I'm more focusing on bending. Yeah. So then I was doing probably, I think, 2 days a week bending and a handful of other days doing thick bar, pinch, grippers, et cetera, weight training once or twice.
I'm finding that I gotta chill a little bit. It's just I'm so into it, and I find it so satisfying that I'm down here, but literally my forearms are screaming, and I got pain in my right index knuckle bad, and it's just too much too soon, I think. So it's hard to just rest, when you're excited about something.
It's really hard, like we were talking about earlier, it's really hard on those small tendons that you've probably never trained before, and your hands in areas that you've never felt before. I mean, I have the big old knuckle callus, so that builds up over time, but it definitely, you have to slow down, especially at first, because otherwise you will get injured. You'll have tendonitis and such. So I definitely recommend when you're brand new, twice a week, if you're doing lowish volume, it's probably fine. But just, you have to tailor that on your own and just make sure you're not going in there with a ton of pain in your forearms. Otherwise it'll just make it worse. I took a second run at the steel shredder 2 days after my first one, thinking I could beat my time, and it was just a disaster. It was just this one's not even being submitted. Especially on stuff like that where it's endurance and snapping. again, I've never really done much of it, but I imagine that's going to take, a week or so of healing time because that's so hard on your forearms.
Yeah, it really is. It's so much core and cardio. It's just like there's the only full grappling is the thing I could compare it to, like the amount of work and wind you need. Like doing those 2 snaps, it's a 6-inch 60 penny nail and then like a 10 millimeter by 20-inch bar or something like that you gotta snap, and you gotta snap the nail while lying down and then the bar while standing. And it's a brutal thing, and that's only the grappler division. It goes up from there. I think the guys in the pro division are doing a grade 5 taped to something else, like something crazy. Like
I can't remember, but yeah, it's big stuff.
It's wild. So on your bending days, you doing any kind of warm-ups or?
Yeah, I tend to warm up. I don't do a ton of warm-ups, but I'll do like 2 60 pennies in small wraps.
Okay.
And then I'll do like usually I do a bastard at whatever length my next bend is going to be. So like when I did the 6-inch grade 8, I did a 6-inch bastard in singles as a warm-up, and then I would just go straight into bending.
And that's 5/16 the bastard?
Yeah, 5/16 by 6 or 7 or whatever I'm about to do.
Yeah.
That way it just gets a feel for that length for me personally.
Yeah. And you said you're using double pads most of the time?
Warm-ups I usually do, my warm-ups I'm doing singles.
Okay.
And then for work bends, I'm usually doing doubles. I do a little bit of single work, but I'm more about, I've never been about like small wraps, smaller steel. I'm more about, bending the biggest steel I can. So I'm doing the biggest pads that I feel comfortable, I guess, and get a benefit from.
Gotcha. What types of pads do you use?
Right now, I'm just doing double leathers that I bought. I bought a sheet from Tandy Leather 9 months ago or so and just cut it up. And I'm doing doubles with that. Back in the day, I used to do the center wraps were iron mine pads that I would chalk up, and then I'd have a pair of leathers over top. I might try to go back to that. I think I'm going to order some iron mines to go after the gold.
Nice.
But we'll see. Right now, I'm just doing double leathers.
Yeah. I did the same thing. I was just looking at the leather pads, and I was like, I could just order a sheet of leather and just cut this thing to length. The ones that came from David are pretty nice. These suede ones, they're kind of, I could see this being good as an initial wrap and then going leather around it. They're like, they're pretty good. All right, let's see. What about, we kind of touched on it, but do you do anything specific for recovery or nutrition?
I do have a couple things I do specific. Recovery, the best thing that I found is contrast baths. That's something that Aaron taught me forever ago, Aaron Corcoran.
Sure.
So I fill up, and I have decent sized sinks, the 2 sides. So one side I'll fill up with as hot of water as my faucet will put out. And the other side I'll put cold water and put a bunch of ice in it. Yeah. And I'm doing like 2 minutes per side, like 5 total repetitions, I guess, or cycles. So I'm in there for like 20, 30 minutes.
Nice.
That really helps to aid recovery. And then also just different things that help the blood flow into the hands. So I'll just squeeze a stress ball at work. I'll do rubber band extensions. So wrap rubber bands around my fingers and open them up. Those, I forget what those are called. Those Chinese medicine ball, those little handball things. I don't remember what those are called. Those are also good to help just dexterity in your hands and get blood flow in. So just anything that helps get more blood in your arms while you're recovering is good. Sure.
Anything special for nutrition, or don't really care about that?
No. I mean, I'm trying to eat a little healthier just because I'm not great on nutrition, but nothing specific.
What about any type of like mental training, mental aspects of bending? We kind of touched on just like getting psyched up, but any other, like for a beginner bender, anything, mental you touch on? Yeah, I guess guys talk, or like in that documentary on the Mighty Atom, people were talking about just like that we only use like 30% of our body's strength capacity, and it's just about unlocking like the other 70.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for me, it's the psyched up thing is huge. Like, that morning where I'm doing bending, I'm doing a lot of caffeine, a lot of just getting myself mentally prepared. Like I'll watch videos from either myself or someone else to just get me like kind of in that mindset of bending. In regards to newer people, I think you have to be able to deal with the pain that comes from bending, because you're not used to that if you've never done it much before. So I think just getting used to the fact that your hands are going to hurt and there's going to be pushing through pain, like physical pain involved in bending. And I don't know the best way to necessarily deal with that, but just other than just realizing that that's part of it and that's part of the sport.
Just some measure of pain tolerance is coming
pain
with
tolerance
it.
is huge.
No doubt. All right. Well, we've reached about the halfway point of the show, maybe a little more. So I'm going to hit you with what I call the medley, which is just a rapid fire sequence of questions. So you ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Let's go.
Favorite thing to bend?
Type of metal, you mean?
Yeah.
Bolts. I really like, the grade 5 and grade 8 bolts. I think they're really fun.
Nice. Hardest thing to bend for you?
That 6-inch grade 8 was freaking hard. Like finishing that was such an accomplishment for me. So I'd say that for sure.
Right on. I know the answer for this, but I'll ask you anyway. Strongest bending style for you?
Double overhand. I do not do much else, honestly.
Yeah. Weakest style?
I mean, if we're counting snapping, again, I've never really done any snapping, so I don't know if that even counts. But
yeah,
I'm also not great at reverse. I want to get better at it. I'm decent at double underhand, not great. Reverse is weakish. Snapping I never even parlayed into, so at some point I want to try that, but definitely not great at it right now.
You got to try some snapping and get back to me.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Something outside of training, bending, or strength sports that you enjoy?
This is a really weird one. It's hard for me to do this now because of work and such, but I actually play bridge for fun. So I compete in strongman, and I also compete in a game that is primarily played by 80-year-olds. So it's definitely a little bit of a weird dichotomy there, but it's really fun brain activity.
I like that. I like the balance. I'm that way in many ways myself. So what is the one bend that got away? What's something you've attempted that you just can't close it down yet?
So my genuine answer to this is the 4.5-inch edge-in. I've done that 3 times, and I would need to get back to trying it again, and I think that's within the realm of possibility. My sarcastic answer to this is the red nail, because I was on the cert list and now not anymore.
You should just do something crazy, like do 2 of them at once or something. Recert like that,
That'd be fun. Yeah, there you go.
Or cut it to like 3 inches.
There you
go. Who's the strongest person you know?
Well, if I got to stick with grip, I'm going to go Aaron Corcoran, just because he's one of the best all-around grip guys, and I don't think he does much bending anymore, but he was the best at one point.
You could go outside of grip too, even could be like your grandpa.
That's true. Man, I don't know. I think it's still him, because even back in the day, he was a power lifter and he benched 500 or 600 pounds and was deadlifting 8+. So he had some crazy strength back in his day.
Crazy.
So I got to stick with Aaron, or just in general.
Right on. All right. Funniest reaction a person has had when they find out you bend nails in your spare time?
I mean, all of their reactions are funny, because they never know what to do with that information. They're just they're just so dumbfounded by that. So I don't know if I have one specific reaction. I do have a funny story. I did a bending show when I was visiting Germany at the age of 17, 16.
Cool.
Something like that, and just for the students there, and they were all just so blown away by it. They had no concept of what that was, and I bent a wrench and a couple of nails and left it all for them to have, and that was really cool. But yeah.
Nice. Another one I think I might know the answer to, at least currently, but what music are you listening to while bending?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of all over. I have a workout playlist, but the one that tends to be most fired up is Eminem, which, his Kamikaze album or Kill Shot's really good track by him. So
I was just listening to the second album that he put out. back in the day, and I was just thinking that, like, I can't even believe that sold in 2020. Like, that's about as far from woke as you could ever
Oh
be.
yeah, when he was just like super, yeah, it's
So
super politically
aggressive.
Incorrect, but yeah,
Oh my lord, yeah.
always been Eminem.
It's a vicious album. It's good, but my god. All right, cool. So you made it through the medley. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So in closing, who's someone you'd like to see me have on the show?
I mean, Don would have been a good choice. You said you're already going to go with Don because he's one of the best, like, braced, especially short bars and snappers around right now.
Yep, I got Don ready to go.
I'm trying to think of who else would be a good one. Aaron, if he's interested, would be good just because he's one of the OGs. I don't think he does much bending now, though, so I don't know how relevant that is to the current podcast.
I'm happy to have guys, like, I don't think Clay's doing much bending either. I want to have a real spectrum of guys, old and new, beginners and elite, grappler benders. Like I said, I just want it to be a variety, like, so if you came to this, like, if you listen to this on the first day you got your first nail to bend, like, there'd be a whole variety of stuff to choose from,
Yeah, so I think, I've said Aaron Corcoran's name like 11 times during this podcast, but he's a good one.
Okay.
Actually, Jade, if you're looking for someone more like intermediate who's newer, the person who recommended me would actually be good. I think Jaden Majensky is doing a lot of good bends, and he's getting up there to, like, he's where I was he's almost to where I was when I stopped. So he's at a really strong level, and I think if he keeps going, he can be really good. So he's got some good stuff to contribute for beginners, especially.
Hell yeah. Yeah, he's coming on the show. I have him ready to go. He was actually the first guy. So when I got my bag of nails and I just searched nail bending on Instagram, he was the first guy that came up. And I sent him a message just like, I'm brand new. Like, what advice do you have? This and that. And he sent me all these links, a link to Tommy Jennings rapping, he was so helpful. So he's gonna be on the show, and that's like a meaningful one for me because he was the first guy that I reached out to, and he got right back to me, like, super open. And that was like the spark of just that everybody I've talked to in the community is like an open book with helping somebody that's new, So Jaden's definitely coming.
Tommy would be another good one too. He's got a lot of experience and obviously a very strong bender, so he'd be a good one too on the show.
Yep. There's a message in his inbox.
All right,
cool. We touched on it a little bit, but tips or advice you have for beginner benders?
Don't be afraid to start small. I literally started bending 3/16 round when I started bending, and like 3/16 square was a huge accomplishment for me. So I've come a tremendous distance, and like, don't be too proud to start with a small, amount of steel that seems weak or whatever, just to build up technique and to build up that strength, because it's going to take time. I think that's a big one. And then obviously seek out help. That's what this podcast is good for. And people can always message me if they have questions. I'm happy to help. I think it's awesome to get more people in the sport. So if someone wants to message me on Facebook or Gripboard, I just had someone message me actually on Gripboard asking for technique advice, and I thought that was really awesome that they sought out help. So ask for help. Don't be afraid to start weak, quote unquote, and go easy, because otherwise you will, mess up your elbows or tear something or wind up with some bigger problems down the road. So start small and work your way up.
Nice. And sort of leads me to the next question perfectly, is where can people find you? What's your name on the Gripboard and other social media?
Oh man, Gripboard, I hate my name because it's from an old email. It's Vikings Rule 92. That's my old childlike email that for some reason I still have.
And that is someone else on Instagram. So
really,
Vikings Rule 92 is someone else on Instagram.
Yeah, my Instagram handle is also hilarious. I'm gonna probably make a separate one for bending. I need to think of what I'll make it, and I guess I'll give that to you, and you can, put whatever, dub it over.
Yeah.
And you can find me on Facebook. It's Derek Graybill, so you can always just message me there.
Okay.
And yeah, I'll find my Instagram. I'll make one. So.
Okay. And any events, brands, or gear you want to shout out? It's anything that's working good for you, or anybody that's giving you steel that's been going good.
This guy named Harito, his gripboard handle is Harito. Jan Heller is a really cool guy that's doing a grip certification now that spans with metric nails.
I just saw that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And he's throwing out cash with, unprompted. I thought that was really cool of him for the higher level bends. He's giving cash prizes.
He's coming on.
Okay, cool. That's also a great person to have. I didn't know how good his English was. It seems pretty good to do this, but I wasn't positive to recommend him.
Yeah. He's a little hesitant, but I sent him the outline, and he thinks it'll be fine, and we'll get through it one way or another. But he's definitely somebody I'm going to have on, no doubt.
Yeah, so big shout out to him. I'm trying to think of who else, like grip community wise. Canon Powerworks. I haven't done much of his stuff recently, but Canon Powerworks has some really good small business. Obviously, Fat Bastard Barbell Company we've been talking about. They sell wraps, steel of all levels, and they were the original cert list. I think might have been before Iron Mine, but I can't remember. The Bastard. They were at least around that same time. So definitely with your business to Andrew. He's got some great tools, and I got
an intermediate bag coming from him right now, actually.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and I don't know how his wraps are, but I'm sure they're good too. So definitely good.
Yeah.
Especially if you can't find wraps, if you don't have a leather supply store or whatever. Definitely like leathers a little more than Cordura for new people too. That's a good thing to mention. I think leathers are more new people conducive than the Cordura. They require a little more technique.
Yep. Nice. Well, that's all I got for you, man. Do you have anything you want to say in closing, or?
Thanks for having me on. This is awesome. I like that you're starting this. I think it's cool to try to get the sport to grow more. Like I said, I'd love to see it be as big as grappling or even kind of close. I hope we can get it back up to at least where it used to be in 2010, if not much bigger, with the number of people involved and the intensity of competition. So, let's get everyone hyped up on bending. It's a freaking awesome sport. It requires a little bit of pain tolerance.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I definitely would like to have you back on in the future, potentially with like another guest. I'm thinking maybe season 2, I'll have some people back, and maybe I'll have you on with Don or whoever, or maybe even if I could get Aaron, we'll do that. And, we'll see where it goes down the line.
Cool. Yeah, another person you could have on with season 2 with me would be this guy named Chad Kovac.
I have that written down. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, he's getting back into bending. He was a huge bender way back when, one of the best probably back in the day, and getting back into it. So he's actually trying to cert on the red reverse. So he's got some huge goals, and he wants to. We're racing to the chain of all shinies once he's done with that. So that's definitely a good person to bring on, either now or in season 2.
Right on. I'll definitely look into that. Well, I'll be in touch, man. I really, really appreciate it. Have a good rest of the night.
All right. Thanks. You too, buddy. Bye.
All right. Take it easy.